welcome to the Charles Show. It's great to have you guys here with us again. I've got a very interesting guest this week for our podcast, and we're also doing this live for YouTube, which is cool. First time I'm doing that, so it took me a while to figure everything out. But we've got Laura here, who is an expert dietitian, specifically around plant-based nutrition, which is a massive trend at the moment. And just super interesting field, massive growth in terms of future foods, what people are doing. So yeah, it's great to have you, Laura. Thanks for being here. Can you just give us some background, just who you are, what you've done, that kind of thing?
Okay, so obviously, like you said, my name's Laura. I'm a registered dietitian, been practicing in Durban for about 5 years now. Worked in government and then went into private practice, traveled a little bit. I was vegetarian for many years. Actually, while I was practicing, I was vegetarian. And then in the last year and 8 months or so, for the last year and 8 months, adapted the vegan lifestyle. So I have a massive passion for plant-based nutrition, like you mentioned, and I'm actually currently doing my master's in that topic to see whether how dietitians feel about it and whether all the like crazy trends, like you say, that people have been speaking about and the popularity around it is worth any backing scientifically. So, which has been super interesting to do.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. Yeah, so I just know from clients that I've seen in the past, and just because of the industry we're in, it is a big growth market, a vegan, vegetarian, that whole industry. Can you just give us some background as to some of the growth and what you kind of see happening in this field?
Yeah, you're definitely right. I mean, if you think about back in our parents' day, for example, there wasn't much talk about vegetarian and veganism and things like that. And I think a lot of it has to do with culture and the way that we are brought up. Obviously, we're brought up believing that we need to eat meat, that we need to consume dairy products and those kind of things. But with population growth, we know now that meat is not farmed in the same way that it used to be farmed back in the day. And with that comes a lot of health consequences. And I think with a lot more people getting sick and a lot more people, getting strange diseases, we're looking at why that's happening, and a lot of it is being linked to food. And I think that has driven the popularity in vegetarian and vegan nutrition especially. In South Africa, it's still quite an untouched topic. Definitely a lot more work needs to be done on that. But if you look internationally in the States and in the UK, Australia, it's a rapidly growing movement. The amount of scientific literature that has come out in the last few years is actually insane. There was a gap in the market almost where there was nothing, and now all of a sudden there's so much more interest in it. And if you just go into the shops and look on the shelves, there's so many more alternatives, plant alternatives for your milks and cheeses, and a lot more labeling of vegan products, a lot more health food shops and things like that, organic vegan restaurants opening up. And I think that's just testament to the movement itself. And a lot of people do it for different reasons. I think a lot of people do it for health reasons or for ethical reasons, or so it totally depends on the individual, but there definitely has been a major increase in popularity. Yeah,
definitely. I've seen it just because of the work that we do. I just want to go back to just something you touched on with regards to animal agriculture. The environmental impact of animal agriculture or the greenhouse gas effect is the same as all transportation combined, which is a shocking figure.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to go just a little bit more into that.
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of people look over. A lot of people think, you go vegan and it's just because of the animal reason, and they don't actually think about the environmental issue of it. And yeah, we know that animal agriculture is the highest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, and that's purely a methane issue with cows.
Yeah.
And of course, transporting the cows then, and the amount of land that we use to grow cows is huge, and the amount that we could then use to grow vegetables or even soy itself is soy to feed humans rather than feeding the cows. We could feed billions of hungry people. We live, especially in South Africa, and in India too, we have starving people all over, and yet we continue to feed this food to animals who essentially are killing the environment itself. We're chopping down the rainforests to make more space to grow soya to feed back to the animals rather than feed back to the people. So we really are. We're damaging the environment. We're using up so many local resources. We're using up a lot of water. We are in a massive drought in South Africa. Cape Town especially is in a huge drought. And if we actually just cut out meat from our diet, in particular beef at the moment, and that's it. Like you said, it's small steps. You don't need to go completely vegan. You don't need to cut out all animal products. But baby steps, by cutting out red meat, you're already taking a step to, the less you buy, the less we need to produce. So it's like it's an effect that happens, which, baby steps definitely will help.
Yeah, exactly. I also think that it's kind of getting more mainstream. So in the States, there are a few companies that have been backed by massive Silicon Valley venture capitalists like Hampton Creek and Beyond Meat and those kind of guys. And also I've done a bit of research into cricket farming as an alternative protein, which, I mean, again, you're using crickets, which might be weird to some people, but it is really like an interesting field, and a lot of funding, which ultimately, no one wants to say it, but if people are going to make money, it will become more mainstream. So, and I suppose it's good that it's going in that way.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the thing. If we buy less animal products, there's less of a demand. But if we buy more plant products, there's more of a demand. So corporate companies see that, and people do. People like the taste of meat. Or it's a comfort thing. They might not necessarily like the taste, but it's definitely a comfort thing. So those companies that you mentioned, like, if you are creating a product that gives you all the flavors of a meat without the cruelty involved, without the environmental impact, without using all our natural resources, people are more likely going to buy it if they are educated on the good that's in it. Yes, oftentimes when you use alternatives, they may not necessarily be the healthiest because a lot of them may be processed. But at the same time, a lot of the quality of meats that we eat are not exactly the greatest quality.
Yeah.
So, so it's almost like you've got to weigh it up and, again, assess your reasons for why you're doing it. But yes, definitely there is a lot more research going into crickets and worms, for example, as well.
I find it so interesting. It's like weird,
super interesting.
And it's like popular.
Yeah, and the thing is, and I think that's the biggest thing, you mentioned the protein thing, because that's a lot of people's biggest concern is, where am I going to get my protein from?
Yeah.
So when you talk about the crickets and you talk about the protein, people get a little bit excited and they think, oh, okay, well, I can eat those and then I'll get my protein. A lot of people are not aware that you can get all your protein from plant foods as well. It is really interesting what corporate companies are doing. And I think it's great that big corporate companies are actually investing in the research to do more and to learn more about it.
Yeah, because they can make money. So
well, exactly.
which is good for the planet. So. But can you just explain, if someone is new to this and they don't understand the difference between a vegan and a vegetarian, and also why would someone become a vegan? So there's ethical versus health versus a couple of other things. Can you just touch on that if someone isn't aware of the differences?
Okay, so vegetarian and vegan, there's a big difference between the two. Vegetarian kind of has a lot of definitions under that. So vegetarian basically means that you still consuming your dairy products and a lot of the time eggs, but again there are definitions underneath that. So you can be a vegetarian, but you can be a pescatarian, in which you still eat fish, dairy and eggs, or you can be a lacto-ovo where you are eating dairy and eggs only. So there's a whole lot of little things, but basically you do still consume animal byproducts, whereas a vegan does not consume any animal products or animal byproducts. So that includes like your gelatin, for example, will not touch it, or if you're buying a whey protein, won't have that because it's got a milk protein in it. So it's basically the exclusion of all animal products, and that's what a vegan is. And again, reasons for people doing it. A lot of people, for religious reasons, a lot of people are vegetarian, so they choose not to eat animal products, but will still consume eggs and dairy. But a lot of the time, if it's for health reasons, we know that a lot of saturated fats are in animal byproducts. So people will choose to avoid those foods, in which case they are more likely to be vegan. Again, it's an environmental thing as well. We know the damage that animals do to the environment, so then they will also most probably become vegan. Again, it's an individual choice. So what I've found with a lot of people that I've met that are vegan is that most of them start vegetarian. They'll start vegetarian, and it will be either for the religious reasons, for health reasons, or for the moral animal cruelty side of things. And then over time, as they evolve their vegetarianism, they'll become more open-minded and do more reading or watch more documentaries or just try more vegan foods. And from then, they eventually just start reducing more of their dairy intake or more of their egg intake. And eventually they adapt a vegan lifestyle. And I think it's becoming easier and easier to make the transition. In the beginning, it was a lot more difficult, but now with the availability of our milk alternatives and things, becoming vegan is a lot easier.
Yeah, I think this definitely is becoming more accessible. In South Africa, not as much yet, but like in the States and in Europe, it is a lot more accessible. But so this is, we often get asked this, but can you just kind of explain the range of people from vegan to extreme case?
So that's very true, and it's kind of sometimes tough telling people that you are vegan because they think that you are crazy, that you are this hippie with like dreadlocks in your hair and you shower, that kind of a thing. That's very, I don't actually know where that comes from, but I think a lot of people, when it comes, what I've found is that people that are vegan for the moral and ethical reasons are generally the more vocal vegans. They are a lot more, I don't want to use the term aggressive, but they are a lot more imposing on their beliefs onto other people, and it's because they found that they have this personal connection to the animal. So in which case it is like it's a heart thing where they feel like it's just unfathomable how someone can consume an animal that has feelings, because animals are sentient beings. So in that sense, those vegans are generally the ones that are like a little bit more in your face probably. Those that go vegan for health reasons generally have a lot of positive things to say. They feel better, they have more energy, they'll speak great things about it, but will never impose and push it on other people. And the environmental one is just, that's kind of like a backup. I don't know many vegans that go vegan just because of the environmental issues. A lot of vegetarians will do it for environmental reasons, but not necessarily will go vegan. But yeah, and you get groups, Anonymous for the Voiceless, for example, is one which will often do demonstrations and we'll talk about why you should go vegan, and a lot of that is based on the animal rights thing. And there's nothing wrong with what they're doing, and it can be successful, definitely. A lot of people will have questions, but people prefer to remain ignorant. So, and that's unfortunately the culture and the society that we live in today, is people, anytime something is challenged from what you believe in, you're kind of going to get your back up and say, no, that's not what I've been taught, rather than going and actually doing the research and finding out the information yourself. So those kind of talks that they do, Anonymous for the Voiceless, they can be successful, but a lot of people may take offense to them. So it's a personality thing. Yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing, is what I've found. It's often immediately aggressive towards your choice. So I mean, you get to choose whatever you want. To make a rational decision, you should try and have as much information at hand.
That's it.
So if you have the vegan info and the meat eating info, or whatever you need, and you choose to do one over the other, if you choose to eat meat, that's also fine. From my side, because you have made a choice. And ultimately, what I believe, life is about choices, and if you can live with them, that's cool. Like, that's fine. But often there is quite a aggressive and people trying to persuade you otherwise for your choice, which is quite a weird dynamic.
It is, and I often get people. I mean, people are always like, "Why are you vegan?" And I'm in this now mindset where I'm like, "Well, do you love animals?" And if they say yes, I'm like, "Do you care about your health?" Yes. "Do you care about the environment?" Yes. And then I'm kind of like, well, then these are the things you need to ask yourself, like, why are you not vegan? And go and do the research as to why I'm vegan, because those are my reasons. And that kind of gives people more, I mean, if people are really interested, they will do the research, but a lot of time people just won't. Like I said, they just prefer to remain ignorant. I think back in the day, it used to be seen as this extreme thing to do. To cut out all animal products was unheard of. But now, you say you're vegan and people are kind of like, okay, well, yeah, I guess this...
Yeah, it is a lot more socially accepted.
Yeah, it is. And it is because, I think a lot of the time it is because we are in this society now where research is so easy. We can look up something quickly on Google, or, you know, if we want to find out something scientifically, we can also, again, use Google and find a scientific journal article about it. We can watch documentaries that are available. It's all of these things that are making, you know, us find out more information so much easier. Information is so much easier accessible now.
Yeah, you have all this stuff at hand.
Yes. It's all about just looking at it.
Yeah. But what I found interesting is, because I also obviously research this kind of thing a lot, is millennials, which
yes.
kind of just scrape, I think, if you were born in 84 or after, you kind of considered a millennial. But millennials are tending to become vegan a lot more, which is super interesting. And also, if you are a food company, you should listen, because these are your buyers of your products.
Yes.
But there's a huge proportion of them that are either becoming full vegan or at least vegetarian a lot of the time.
Yeah. And I definitely think that's to do with the information that we have available. And I think that we used to live in a society where nothing was ever challenged. We did what our parents told us to do, or our parents did what their parents told us to do. Whereas now we kind of, I don't know, millennials, yes, maybe it's because of social media and what is portrayed on a daily basis through social media, or what we see popping up on our news feeds and things, what other people share. We are just exposed to so much more. So if you are that open-minded, inquisitive person, you generally will stop at a certain thing, read it, and say, hang on, like, why does it say that when I've been told this? And so millennials that are constantly using social media are way more exposed to these things and can use that same social media to go and find out more information about that topic.
Yeah.
So that's definitely true. Millennials are so much more open-minded. And I think a lot of people have been saying that veganism and vegetarianism is a phase, that it's just one of those things that people are going through now, but they'll get over it soon. And I completely disagree. I actually think that more and more people are becoming this way for health, environmental, and moral reasons. And those are the reasons you tend to stay in a certain... People are adapting it as lifestyles rather than diets. And of course, there will be some that will do it as a phase also, but I definitely think that millennials now that do it are generally going to stick through with it.
Yeah, and also, I mean, with any kind of diet or lifestyle choice, it's if you become fully committed as a lifestyle choice. So if you are following, let's say, a ketogenic diet, you kind of have to buy into the whole lifestyle and why you're doing it. If you are following a vegetarian diet, you have to buy into it fully. And I think veganism, that's why it's becoming popular, because it has very simple rules. Eat that, don't eat that.
Yes.
And if you buy into it ethically or for health reasons, it's a lot easier to stick to as well.
Yeah, and I think that's probably what people have said to me the most, is, isn't it hard? Don't you find it difficult? And of course it's difficult. And I'm not saying it's difficult in my own capacity. It's difficult in social situations when you are going out with friends and you are the only vegan. When you are going to a restaurant of their choice and you know that there's...
Can't get like poked with a stick.
Yes,
what are you gonna have?
That's it. And like, is there anything you can eat on this menu? Oftentimes, no, I'm just going to like have water. So a lot of the times, yes, it can be difficult, but in your own home environments, it's not difficult. When you are in control and when you know you're doing it for the right reasons, it's not a difficult choice. It's not a difficult lifestyle to follow when you are doing it for the right reasons. But yes, you need support. I think having support is probably one of the most important things. Like, I'm fortunate enough to have a lot of vegan people that I know and that support me on a daily basis. Whereas I can imagine for someone who goes vegan and comes from a family where, you know, having a massive bra or barbecue, whatever, every Sunday is the biggest thing. It can be really tough, and you can get a lot of resistance from family and from friends, and that can make you kind of change your idea.
Yeah, influence your decisions.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And then in terms of becoming a vegan, you mentioned it earlier, it's kind of for most people, a progression. And most people that I speak to often do worry about protein, because we are, as a nation, obsessed with protein. Just when I was in private practice, that's one of the first things I used to cut down on our macros for people was protein, because they would just excessively eat protein and wonder why they weren't losing weight or didn't have their health under control. So how do you, in a protein obsessed culture, get enough protein with a vegan diet?
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy. It's so easy to do, but it's so tough to explain because it's such a mind shift. And a lot of the time, the problem is that people see protein as meat. People see a piece of meat and think that 30 gram piece of meat is 30 grams of protein, which we know is not true.
Yeah.
And so the minute you take that out of the diet, people go, oh my gosh, but there goes my 30 grams of protein. And you're like, no, hasn't gone anywhere.
Yeah.
You can get that from other foods. So plant foods, for example, I mean, we have essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids, and we can get all of those from plant-based diets. So I think a lot of the time, the protein thing is driven into ourselves by corporate companies, by gym bunnies that are like, oh, where do you get your protein from? Like gym gains and all those kind of things. But in actual fact, carbs contain protein, vegetables contain oil proteins, nuts and seeds are so great. They are so full of all the great omegas. They have all the vitamins and minerals. And if you are consuming enough calories, you are consuming enough protein. That's something that I always tell people. Are you eating enough? Then you are getting enough protein.
That's an interesting
way to think.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
And I think
a variety though. If you're eating a variety and getting calories.
Absolutely.
Because you can also just eat bread,
which
a lot of vegans do in the beginning, is eat bread with peanut butter.
Yes, and that's the unhealthy vegan. I always say you can get a healthy vegan or you can get an unhealthy vegan. And unhealthy vegans are often the ones that you do see a lot of deficiencies in, because it's like bread and peanut butter and junk food, because they're not really sure what else to do, which is why I also say, like, talk to people or get yourself involved in communities where there are other vegans, where you can like bounce ideas off each other for meal ideas, or just have like community gatherings where you can chat and learn more about vegan diets. But yeah, just briefly back to the protein thing. We only need between 0.8 and 1.2 grams of protein per kg per day to sustain us. And that's so simple to get. For an individual like me, I need about 60 grams a day, and that's max. That's a lot. I mean, that's not a lot, and that's easily attainable on a vegan diet.
Yeah.
Just with carbs and vegetables and a little bit of peanut butter. So
I think in terms of protein, that's where a lot of people go wrong, is in any diet. They tend to try and get about, I don't know, for some reason, it's about 2 grams per kilogram is the golden number, but it's almost half or less than half than that. So if you do want to work out how much protein you need, just multiply your weight by 0.8 to 1 kilogram, and if you aren't at an ideal weight, you could even have less, because you could multiply your ideal weight with the amount of protein you need.
Yeah.
But anyway, just take your weight, multiply it by 1. That's the amount of protein you need in a day. So it's not that much. It's not 2 to 2.5 grams per kilogram, unless, I mean, there are exceptions with long distance elite athletes who need more, but for the general person, that's kind of what we need.
Yeah, if you are super athletic, of course your needs will be a lot higher. But for the average individual, it's not that excessive, and that's so easy to get. I mean, oats in the morning, rice and beans for lunch, vegetables. Same thing at dinner, and you will have your protein intake. I read an interesting quote yesterday that said, you go into a hospital and it's full of sick people with diabetes, with hypertension, with obesity, but no one with a protein deficiency. And it's so true.
Yeah,
like you don't get protein deficiencies anymore. So if you are eating enough calories, you will be consuming enough protein. It's just a good way to think of it.
And also, I think if you are super worried that you aren't getting enough, especially in the beginning, there are vegan-friendly protein powders now that you can supplement your diet if you are really worried about it. If you are worried about muscle loss, there is something that you can supplement So there are a lot more products on the market.
Yeah, there are. So, I mean, if you just go into any natural health shop, you'll find a lot of alternatives. There's a lot of soya protein shakes. In fact, there's a lot of big corporate companies are now producing vegan protein shakes, which is quite cool. It's quite a nice thing to see.
Cricket protein.
Yes.
Yum.
I don't know how that would taste. But yeah, so there is definitely that alternative. Or even just having more, making your own homemade shakes and throwing in some chia seeds or throwing in soy milk and peanut butter and a banana and having a shake after gym, before gym, whatever. Again, that's another way to just increase your protein intake, and then you are still having a relatively healthy meal in itself as a smoothie.
And then in terms of, there are a few legitimate concerns people do have, and I just want to touch on a few of them. So we touched on protein, iron, vitamin B12, and if we can just touch on those for now.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about the others just now.
Yeah, so iron, iron is a problem in the general population and among vegan and vegetarians. So a lot of people that consume meat are actually iron deficient. So you obviously have your non-heme iron, which is your plant iron, and your heme iron, which is your animal iron. The absorption rate, there's no issue with it. A lot of the time back in the day, it was thought that non-heme iron was difficult to absorb, but actually we absorb it really well as humans. So making sure that you consume a lot of leafy greens, a lot of broccoli, seeds, so your sesame seeds, your sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, all of those contain a really, really good amount of iron. So throwing that over cereals and into smoothies and things like that will help to increase iron intake, definitely. And then consuming your iron with a vitamin C, so with the orange, or so having, after lunch, if you've had spinach or kale or something like that for lunch, and then you have a citrus fruit or something afterwards, that will help to absorb the iron.
Yeah, because that's because vitamin C helps iron to go into your system better and faster.
Yeah. And then B12, that's probably the biggest problem. We do not get B12 in a vegan diet. That is the one thing that you have to supplement with. So, and many places contain supplements that you can buy. But again, a lot of foods are also fortified with them. So a lot of soy milks contain B12. Nutritional yeast, for example, that a lot of people use in trying to imitate cheese, has B12 in it. B12, even people that consume meat, a lot of the time their B12 levels might be low, but B12 takes years to see a deficiency. So it's better to supplement with it immediately rather than to delay. So I always tell people, if you're going for B12, take 1,000 milligrams. You need to take that like three times a week. And that's it. And it's very easy to get over the counter. So
yeah, I mean, it's available.
Yes.
Anywhere.
Yes. Calcium, that's actually another one that people do concern about because you are cutting out your dairy. But again, I always say to people, leafy greens are your best friend when you go vegan, because even calcium can be found in all your leafy green vegetables. So making sure that you consume enough of those, again, a lot of the time it is fortified in your plant milks also as well.
And I think also with calcium, vitamin D is often the culprit because people just don't go into the sun. So vitamin D helps with calcium absorption. So what I know I found when I was in private practice, often vitamin D, especially in older people, because they're not synthesizing vitamin D as well, and then they're not getting into the sun, that was more often the cause of bone density issues than actual calcium intake, because there is calcium in a lot of things besides dairy.
Yeah, and I've actually seen that recently quite a bit as well, is that a lot of the time people will blame calcium, but it's not actually the calcium, it is the vitamin D, which is bizarre when we live in such a sunny city.
Yeah, it's a sunscreen.
Yes, that's covering up all the
day.
time. Yeah, it's being indoors. So it definitely is. So that's why I always say to people, try, if possible, 15 minutes in the sun a day, if you can, just to help with that absorption. And that's all you need, and making sure that you are consuming the foods that contain calcium as well.
Because even with vitamin D, I think the metagenic supplements have the highest. Those aren't vegan friendly, I don't think, but they're 5,000 IUs. To get into the sun for 15 minutes, you're getting, I think, 10,000 or more IUs for 10 to 15 minutes. And you know how good you feel after you've been in the sun. So you don't have to take a pill. You can stand in the sun. I know it can be a mission, but if you get into the habit of it, you feel great, and then you're getting loads of benefits.
And I mean, I say this to people all the time, like how much time do you sitting in a chair, like on your phone, on social media? Instead of doing that inside, why don't you go outside and do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Just stand in the sun and do it. Obviously, I'm a part gym owner, so oftentimes I'll do my workout in the gym and then I'll stretch outside to get that 15 minutes of sun outside.
Good idea.
So it's all little things that you can do. I mean, even when you're driving, you are essentially in the sun for a little bit as well. But
Just
get out
wear
of
the
your
wife
car.
beater,
Yes,
the arm
exactly. You're getting your vitamin D. So there's small little things that you can do just to make sure that you are getting your vitamin D.
Yeah, for sure. Another concern that people have is for soya products and the estrogens or phytoestrogens that they believe aren't good. Can you just touch on soya?
Yeah. So phytoestrogens and estrogens are totally different things. Phytoestrogen obviously is from the plant, whereas estrogen is from an animal or human. So, and I think that's the reason a lot of people get concerned is because they just hear estrogen and they get nervous. But the body digests phytoestrogen in a totally different way that it digests estrogen. So it actually causes no harm to the body at all, soya itself. It's actually been proven in quite a lot of studies to be protective against certain cancers like breast and prostate cancer. So a cow, for example, produces estrogen when they're pregnant. So by consuming a lot of dairy products, you are indirectly consuming estrogen as well, which is a lot more similar to a plant's estrogen because a cow is much more similar to us, of course. So soya has to be consumed in excessive amounts for it to have any disastrous effect. I think it's like 80 servings a day, which is huge. And I think along with soya comes the issue of genetically modified foods, where people, are genuinely concerned about, is it soya? Could it be genetically modified? And, nowadays finding something that is really not genetically modified is quite difficult. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, everything is essentially...
Yeah.
Unless you can get to... the real roots and grow your own stuff. But if you're buying most commercial stuff is in some way probably genetically modified.
And there is, of course, a limit that companies have to stick to in order to have that label that says not genetically modified. So if you can, yes, look for that label, but don't obsess over it.
I think where you can, but it's
yes.
look for the bigger picture. If not everything is going to be non-GMO. And a lot of people label things incorrectly and say that it's non-GMO when really it is. So it's just something to be mindful of.
Yeah. And I think in that sense, that's one of the things I always say to people is wherever possible, just eat real food. Try and avoid, you can become very obsessed with GMOs and organic and things like that. But if you just focus on eating real natural food, so fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds and whole grains, that's a great start. Avoiding processed foods as much as you can, and you're already doing yourself a favor.
Yeah, and then just lastly to finish off, with regards to elite athletes, so a lot more athletes that are becoming vegetarian and vegan, and what would, like a typical day in your life, what would you eat? Because that's what people want to know. What do I eat in terms of food?
So I think for me, because I'm a girl, it's quite different. But I can definitely talk on a lot of other people that I know, especially my business partner who is also vegan. But morning will generally be an oats breakfast with some cinnamon and flaxseed, some goji berries, raisins, pumpkin seeds, those kind of things, and a banana and peanut butter. That would be breakfast. Neither of us are snackers. If we do snack, it will be a piece of fruit or so. But generally breakfast is quite filling, so it also stays until lunch. And then lunch, I always try and have some kind of legume at lunch, so chickpeas, lentils, jugo beans are my new favorite at the moment, and then some kind of starch, so whether it's potato or sweet potato or brown rice, something like that, and then some kind of green. So whether it's broccoli, whether it's spinach, kale, that kind of a thing. So always have something like that for lunch. So combining the leafy greens with the legumes and the starch. And then dinner can be so many different things. I mean, I always try and get a variety of veg. So whether it's veg stir fry, whether it's mixed roast veg, Also always with the legume. Oftentimes I'll just include my potato also in the vegetables. But yeah, soups at the moment because it's a little bit chilly, and then I'll always like maybe have like a rye bread or something with that, or pastas, big fan of pastas, and yeah, and then for like, I mean, a lot of the time snacking will be some nuts after dinner, maybe a handful of nuts, or again another fruit, but never big on desserts and, you know, sweet things or anything like that.
Which you shouldn't eat on a normal diet anyway.
Exactly.
So that's what people say. But what about my chocolates? Like, well, you shouldn't really be having that anyway.
I mean, it should be a treat. It definitely shouldn't be something that you have all the time. And I mean, being vegan, you are so limited already in what you can have in terms of treats. But a lot of the time people are like, you know, what do you have for dessert? Well, you don't need to have dessert after dinner every night. It's a thing that people have got into this habit of doing, which is totally unnecessary.
Yeah.
So it's just breaking habits.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm also big into habit formation, and I think that's the cornerstone. I think a lot of people can get obsessed with diets and following something specific, when really small incremental habits and making having an idea of what you want to do and sticking to a general plan, but incrementally adding habits to your life that make it easier, so you don't have to stick to this rigid plan for 12 weeks. You know, if you're following a normal diet or vegetarian diet, vegan diet, but have little habits that help you to get your goals. Anyway, that's something completely different.
Yeah.
But Laura, thanks for being on the show today. It's been super cool. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe, whatever that is, to our channel. We'll have Laura back. She's super qualified in this field, and she's really interesting, and she knows a lot about a lot. So we'll have her back because it's great, because she's also from the fitness side. She owns a gym and then also a registered dietitian. So it's a great combination. So you've got the whole, both sides of the spectrum. And if you're listening on iTunes or on one of the other podcasting platforms, please subscribe to our channel. Please leave a rating. And if you want to ask any questions, in the description below, just leave some questions, and then we can either make a follow-up video or we can just answer you directly. But thanks for joining us this week, and we will see you next time, or have you with us next time.
Thanks.